You can't miss the next More Faith, More Life podcast. I'm about ready to tell you the journey, how the journey began and how it ended that brought the Smithton Outpouring and 250,000 people, Time Magazine, Newsweek Magazine, to a town of 532 people in that small town. I'm going to show you the journey, so don't miss it, so you'll know how to get on board with your journey to revival.
You were made for more than the status quo. I'm Pastor Steve Gray, and this is the More Faith, More Life podcast. This podcast is for Christians with an ambitious heart who want to be more for their family, do more with their career, and see more of God's promises in their life. I've spent many years as a worship artist, minister, nonprofit leader, bold truth speaker, and most importantly, father and spouse. When I was in my early 40s, I was craving more from God and more from life. I'd done everything I was supposed to do. My life was good, but it wasn't good enough. So I spent the following years diving into the Word of God and searching for the biblical principles that would bring me closer to God and help my purpose and life flourish. That's what I want to share with you. In every episode, you'll get practical tools based on real-life experiences that you can put into action to redefine your faith and ultimately your life. So, if you're ready to do more, subscribe to More Faith, More Life, and hear an unfiltered biblical truth every week. It's time to be and experience more.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another More Faith, More Life podcast. I'm Steve Gray, and I have Kathy with me, and we're going to talk more about revival, preparing for revival. Yes. But the roots of this, Kathy, is something else. You're doing a project.
Yes, I am.
So every one of these podcasts is part of your project, which will probably turn into a book.
Yes, it is.
So we're laying the ground. So these people listening are not only getting the early version of it and the audio of it, they're helping us to create this book.
Yes.
That you're going to do. So tell us briefly, because we want to stay on subject here of why we're doing this, but what's going on? What's your project?
Yes, my project is to take really who you are, your life, and the way God has dealt with you, the principles, the changes, the character, the attitudes, the experience and experiences, and bring them all together, because I believe that what God has created in you is something that needs to be explained to people and written about, but also to be imparted. And this is my goal for all of this.
Maybe I'll answer this question for you, or you can help me. But as I listen to that, and if I didn't know us or I didn't know our story, I'd say, why? Why would you want to do a legacy, thing on me?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm your husband, and you just want to do it, and you find me interesting. Or why wouldn't you do one to the pastor across town? There's a reason. Do you want to try to answer it?
Well, I can try to, and you can also, but I believe it's because, first of all, you're the only man almost that some expert in revival told you that you are about the only man left on the face of the earth who has not led just one revival, but two revivals that were world impacting.
I am the only man on the face of the earth that has done that.
That's
but
right.
There are other men that have been involved in one that are great men and women.
Exactly, great men.
Yes, but that's true. That was said.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think the cry of most pastors and leaders in churches that want to is we want to be more influential. We do want to be bigger, our bigger voice, okay?
Yes.
And we're overshadowed by a lot of mega churches that we only hear about a handful. Most of the time, there's maybe 10 churches, even that, in the United States that we hear about what they're doing, or they're so successful, or they're packing them out, or they got 30,000 people attended their church, and that hits you, and like, well, I'm so insignificant, I don't have anything, and how do I get that bigger voice? And that's why this is so important, because that's where I was, only I was in the worst position. Some of you, at least in a big city, God put me in the impossible situation. You read the Bible, Kathy, it says God chose Israel because they were so small and helpless that they couldn't do it themselves. And he said, I got to have somebody I can do it through that can't take credit. Well, that's me too. I'm in a town of 532 people, a church that was locked up for 4 years, had no money, no people, and there were already 2 other churches in a town of 532 people, so that's kind of divided up. And God says to me, I'm going to bring revival to churches. And I began in that church. I didn't go to the city, which I could have. I got offered, as you know, and started declaring, imagine people lining up to get in this building,
Right.
because the glory of God and revival's in the house. So here's an obscure person that has nothing to work with, just like Israel, who now all of a sudden was launched
Right.
through all the things you're teaching. And how did I get there?
Yeah.
To a national, international, I don't want to say fame, but recognition.
And voice, an
a voice, that's a better way.
Influencer.
Like when,
Yeah.
so all of us from that obscure position, now we're in Japan, and there's posters of me.
Yes.
Remember that? All
yeah.
over Tokyo. There's posters of me.
Yes.
We lost it in translation, but they translated it the man from nowhere, which it meant the man from that country, the obscure little
from
country,
the
the
middle of the
cornfield, in the middle of nowhere is where
Yeah.
and they got the man from nowhere. That's
Yeah,
what the poster
that
said.
was a
All right.
good one.
So
Okay.
that's why.
Why?
Now,
That's
where would you
why I
like
wanna
to
do
start in this story?
Well, the last episode we were talking about preparation of the congregation during the 12-year span before revival exploded upon us, and we talked a lot of the principles last week, which I'm going to pull into this legacy book. And now today I would like to go on with some more of right before revival hit and explaining the preparation that was happening within the people during that 2-week span, actually, and the preparation that was happening very sadly and gruesomely. And, you were going through a lot, battling it out with God during that time. So I'd like to share some of those events and principles.
Yeah, so the year before the revival happened, and made national and international. Before that was the real battleground. Then it moved in. The road narrowed, or the net came down about 2 months. Just about 2 months before the revival hit. Just about 6 weeks. Got worse. Then it got even more narrow for me to where it got down to 2 weeks. Now, when you're the person like me, I don't know I'm just 2 weeks away from revival. I have no idea what was going on in me. I don't want to dwell on this. I'm going to make this about a 1-minute little speech. Okay. But what happened was just small town politics, gossip, and then church people who say they love you. I was choosing my words carefully. Church people who say they love you, and then maybe it doesn't go the way they thought, or maybe they hear a rumor about you. Well, instead of coming to you and letting you explain or tell the truth, they fall for the rumor or they fall for the gossip, and all of a sudden you can tell they've backed away from you. They've gone away. Now maybe they're even helping to spread the gossip rumors, and they just never came to me and said, tell us the truth. What really happened? What's really going on? And instead they spread it. And so people I loved and who said I loved me changed about me. I didn't change towards them. They changed towards me. And it wasn't just them. It was others. And then when you get there, I came to the point like, I don't know if I can keep going with this. Is this? So now 12 years has passed in this church, 12 years pastoring in that little town. And still the promise that I was given about revival hasn't happened. So all of a sudden I think, I gave 12 years to this. And you remember then I got up in the pulpit and said, I've been the pastor here for 12 years. I'm just like the woman with the issue of blood. And it says she spent all that she had and still she was no better. And I said, now that's me. And I walked out of the church. That Sunday morning I left.
Yes, you did.
And it was the 2 weeks of walking in the valley of the shadow of death. Yes. It was a death experience. Yeah. But I was dying on the inside anyway. And so I thought, before I preached that sermon, though, I was going through and I came to you and I said, Kathy, I think maybe God's finished with me, which is an amazing statement when, yes, he was finished with the me, but he wasn't finished with me. And that's the crossover where you get there, which is important to talk about. But anyway, so I began to go through this death experience. I didn't know what to do. And in the meantime, you can talk about in a minute how you continued that preparation, even though it was very difficult for you to have me gone. I remember you saying later, as we've been interviewed so many times, where you said, I didn't know if he'd come back. I didn't know if he was leaving our marriage when you walk out. What does that mean? And so anyway,
Right.
you were the one that said, why don't you go to Pensacola, Florida? There's something called a revival there. You can go to church in the evening because they have services not every night, but 5 times a week, 6, whatever it was. And you can go to a lot of church and see what it is. And in the daytime, you can try to find your way. So I did. I drove down there. Normally I fly even then I started being able to fly, but I needed that road time, that sorrowful going down the lonely highway. And I was broken.
Yes,
And
you were.
when I got there, I couldn't even speak to people. I was so bad. I had no thoughts. I thought, I'm finished. They had a pastor's section. I wouldn't sit with them because I think I'm finished. But I'll go to church. I'll try. And every day, you remember the story, I would go and I would pray and I'd scream into a pillow because I didn't want people to think a crazy man was there, but they did because they'd come, they'd say, housekeeping, Hannah, go away. And I'm there 2 weeks. I was there in this room and I never would let him in. And this crazy man was there. I never spoke. I barely ate to anybody. And I was dying on the inside.
You were dying.
Yeah. And out of that, we'll move it forward because that's all a long story too.
Yeah.
But we'll move it forward. And suddenly, in that condition, I'm sitting in the balcony of that church, and it was doing great. I appreciate what they did and were so much.
Yes.
But me, I'm perishing on the inside, and God's done with me. I'm just going through the motions. I feel nothing. And I heard almost the same voice that said the years ago and said, I know what I do with that church. I would raise the dead, which made us decide to stay in Smithton. And I heard it say, I want you to have a revival. And I looked down at the people on the stage and the tremendous work they were doing. And the Spirit of the Lord was in the house, if they say it that way. I knew it was here, but it wasn't changing me, and I didn't know how to get it exactly. And I pretty much wrote myself off that I'm not good. I don't need it. What do I need it for? I'm not doing anything. And when he said revival, I thought it was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. I thought you are psychologically trying to make your self-esteem feel better about yourself. So I just forgot about it. Next night, I heard the voice again, and I go, this is crazy. I looked down at the worship leader, Lyndall Cooley, I'll just say his name, great guy, and the others that were doing, Steve Hill and Kilpatrick and all the bunch. And I thought, I can't be that. I'm wearing an old T-shirt and a pair of torn up jeans. I'm sitting there going I'm finished. I can't do that. Third night, I'm still sitting there. And I want you to have a revival. And I argued with God. I said, listen, this is crazy. I can't do it. And he said this, I didn't say you had to be the revival. And that was it. I want you to have it. And I began to see that picture of like a waiter going through a party. Like I could go down there, and I can't do what they do, but I could go around with a tray and say, hors d'oeuvres, care for anything, and just serve people. I saw that picture in my head, which is probably not God. That's probably me. But anyway, and then the story that changed my life, I don't know who the man was, that I saw a man go down the stairs. Well, wait. So they had the altar call, and I said, I'm going down the stairs of the balcony. I'm not going to go over there. I didn't have them pray for me because I just didn't think there was any reason to have them pray for me. But I went down the stairs, and I'm going to stand way over at the side, but I'm up closer on the floor. And a man comes down the stairs, tall guy, in a three-piece suit, and in front of me, 10 feet in front of me, he falls on the ground in his suit, just falls flat on the ground. And this awful sound came out, awful, tormented, broken, hurtful, death-sounding sound came out of him. And when I heard that, I go, that's what I need. That's who I need to become. And that was life-changing because I'm trying to figure out what God's going to do for me and with me and all that. And I goes, I want you to have a revival. I'm the one that's not ready. I'm the one that needs that. I don't need to be filled with the power till I say, I'm God's man of faith and power. I can get down there with Steve Hill and I can do it just as good. Because there was hundreds of pastors there going I hope I'm next. I'm going to go back to my church and I'm going to get it. Not me. I wasn't me. God's finished with me. And when I saw that man, I said, that's what I need. And that's where I went. That's where I went with it. I started fighting for that. And I would go back and I would cry out to God. And I'd read the Psalms. And then I found a song called "Everything Is in Your Hands." I put on some music. I'm starting to feel something, I don't know what, put on music. And so I'm praying the Psalms mostly with this music going, which that's a long way where I was the week before. And all of a sudden, something happened to me with the words, everything is in your hands, oh God. And I called you up that night. I think I went to church and then called you up, but I'm not sure. And I called you up and I said, Kathy, hope has come back to me, my hope. And I began to realize the brokenness and then the hope is the beginning of a true revival.
Yes.
I was being revived, but not the way it was going to be. Not with the excitement that's going to happen isn't happening.
Right.
But God is dealing with me. He's preparing me to do something. But I didn't know that. I didn't say we're going to be revival. I just said I got my hope back.
Yeah.
And I noticed when I went back to church after that incident, I started thinking a little bit like a pastor. I'm looking, oh, look what they do. That was,
Yeah.
That's what hope did. It started the wheels turning again. Now, while I'm getting my wheels turned again and getting my hope back, you're back in the small church. I'm gone. Nobody knows what happened. Well,
Right.
they knew I went to. They knew I went to a revival.
I told them that I had said you need to go check out that
Yeah.
revival. So they were thinking you were going to go check it out, observe,
And they were all
evaluate
for that,
it.
right?
Yeah.
They
so
loved
they didn't
that
get
idea.
scared because I didn't say to them, my husband is going there to that revival because he's at the end and he doesn't know if God's going to use him anymore.
Yeah,
I didn't want to
that.
say that. I just said, me, the loving wife, said, hey, go check out something, evaluate it, see, blah, 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 see if
And of
it's
course-
worth anything.
So they felt safe, but you didn't know what was going on,
No.
whether I was going to come back or not. I didn't even say I was coming back
No.
yet. Not at that point.
Yeah.
I do later. But anyway, so in that state, not knowing what was going to happen, you did what you should have done, and that is just stick to the plan and continued revival preparation. So give us a little short synopsis of
I'll
what you
give a
did,
short
because
synopsis
eventually
of
I'm going to
here.
get me back to the
Yeah.
church.
Yes,
but-
I know. That's what I want for you to share this episode. But I continued with what you had ingrained in me all those years. Revival's going to come. Something's going to come. We don't know how to define it, but something from God is going to come. We've spent 12 years teaching the word, getting the people all, grounded in that. Now, what do I do while you're gone there? Because now I feel like the rug's been pulled out from under me. Also, is he even going to come back? And I thought, no, I'm going to rise up. I'm going to keep ministering the power of the Holy Spirit, the ministry of the Holy Spirit. So I did 3 things with our people. First, I taught them about Moses and the burning bush, and I said, listen, if, God spoke to Moses out of nowhere, out of a burning bush, and he responded correctly, and he took his shoes off, and he honored God. What would you do, Smithton Community Church, if God suddenly came into our midst and did something like a burning bush, something really supernatural, something we've never experienced? And they said, we'd take off our shoes. Okay.
All right.
So I did that, and then I started teaching them about the Ezekiel's river and the how the river flows, and it starts small, and then you have to get in it, and you have to move and cooperate. You got to step in to the river of God and do that, and cooperate with.
Is that the
with
section
him.
where it talks about it's ankle deep
Exactly.
and then waist deep?
Ankle
And great
deep,
scripture.
and then you keep moving, and they
gets
thought,
deeper.
yeah, okay, we understand that. If something happens, we'll respond to it, and then we will move in it. We will move. We will not be afraid. We will move forward.
Okay.
All right. And then the third thing was that Sunday, the second Sunday you were gone, you called me, and you said, Kathy.
Well, let me back up to what happened.
Okay.
Because
Yes,
okay,
you
the
tell
hope. Well,
us.
no, you can tell it, but
Yeah.
that hope came in.
Yes. Hope.
So on Sunday morning, they didn't have revival services. They had church, their regular service, their regular
Yeah.
folks. And John Kilpatrick preached. He hadn't preached. Steve Hill was the preacher, in the revival. And so now I could have skipped because that's not, I came to see revival, but I decided hope has come back. I'm going to Sunday morning church. So I went to Sunday morning church. I don't know what it was. I can't put my finger on it, but they had communion and all that. And there was nothing spectacular because they weren't trying to repeat the revival services. There was something else in the room though still. But either way, I came back and without even thinking about it, I said, Kathy, I've just been in the best Sunday morning service I've ever been in. Innocently as can be. Well, I called and told you that. Now,
Yeah, you
that
did.
night, we had Sunday night service, so I think I called after church,
Yeah.
and then that gave you that night service
That's right.
to share
And
that
I
phone
shared
call.
that.
So
Yes, I
now
did.
you take it up.
Okay,
What
so
happened?
I shared that with the
I
people.
had no idea anything was going to happen.
No, and I shared it with the people, and I said, your pastor just called me and said, I've been in the best Sunday morning service of my entire life. And one of our men, who was a leader and just a wonderful man, he stood up and he ran to the front and he turned and he spoke to our men. And he said, I am embarrassed and I am ashamed. And why should it be that our pastor has to drive thousands of miles away to experience the goodness and the power and the glory and the hope and the best Sunday morning service of his life? He said, we're not doing something right. We're not receiving what our pastor has to give us if he has to drive that far. And he turned around, big old guy, fell flat on his face and began crying. And the men responded. And they all rushed forward. Yeah. And it was so glorious and it was so wonderful. And I could hear the groans. I could hear the brokenness that I think they were trying to imagine how you had been feeling down there. Suddenly they understood.
And it's sort of like they became that man in the three-piece suit, which is what we needed to have.
That's what we
needed.
needed.
And the funny thing, when you told me this story, I thought, I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean to make them feel bad, because I'm thinking, I was just going to share that it was good for me.
Yeah.
But God, it was true. It was good for me, but it was better for them.
It was better for them too, because then they were humble and soft and teachable and desperate.
So now we're down to week 1. It's the Sunday night service, and in 1 week I'm coming back. Yeah. So I stayed there and went to church and started the wheels turning, Yeah. And but I have to tell you, I never once thought revival. Even though I heard about I want you to have revival, I didn't start thinking about, I could do this or I could do that. It was nothing. I felt nothing that way. I just had hope again. And that was good enough for me. Because I thought, if God's finished with me as a pastor, I don't need to preach. I don't care if I ever preach again. That's where I was. Or if I teach again, I don't need to go back and be the pastor. I just, as you know, I would say, I just want to live again. I just want my life back. I want to feel life. And hope will make you feel life again. Yes. And that was good enough for me. I thought, this is good enough. So I went to church and had a good week, and I was changing and I didn't know I was changing, but I think I was. But the only conclusion I could make is I'm done here. I got to finally be done. So I called you and I said, I'm coming home, which that was the first you heard that. I'm coming home, but I need to tell you something. I said, if God, and I'll come to church. I'll come and we'll go to church. And I'll try to be there the following Sunday night. But I said, but if God doesn't do something, Kathy, I'm not getting back up, pulling myself up by the bootstraps, starting over and just getting a better attitude and just going to start going through this again. I'm not going to do it. But I will come back and I will come in. And that then began the journey. I left like on a Thursday or whatever, and Friday, and I drove. And I drove and I drove until finally I pulled into the parking space that I pulled in for 12 years. Same one, and sat there. I thought, I feel nothing. God's not saying go for it, like go take the beach. I felt nothing, and I'm sitting there feeling nothing. I remember back then, I used to wear a tie to church all the time, and I remember going through the same door, and I stood there. Then now there's a door, and I can hear the music going. Who is like the Lord? And that's how well I remember this. Mm-hmm. There is no one, and I can hear the beat and the drums and that. And I could feel that. I put my hand on that same door that I walked through for 12 years. And then I went, wait a minute. I straightened my tie because I'm thinking, I'm not feeling anything. But I did. I pushed the door open. And the first person I saw was you, about halfway between them and the first row, the stage in the first row. I saw you. And the only thing I could think to do, because I felt nothing. I felt God was not sending me secret messages or encouragement at all. It was zero. All the thing I could think to do is, everybody's looking at me standing in the doorway. Go hug your wife. That's what you need to do. Show your loving husband and you're okay. And that was the only decision I made. And I began to walk towards you. And the next few minutes, well, the next few years is history. And on the next podcast, More Faith, More Life, I'll share with you what happened in the next approximately 10 or 15 steps from that door to where you were standing. Yes. History would be made. And 250,000 people are going to come through those doors in the next over 3.5 years. 250,000 people in a town of 532 people. Next podcast, next More Faith, More Life, I'm going to share with you what actually happened to me and what the people did in their response that turned into the Smithton Outpouring, the Cornfield Revival, that Newsweek and Time Magazine and newspapers from everywhere would come and say, this is amazing that this would happen in this small town. I'll tell you what happened on the next one. In the meantime, tell your friends. Maybe they'll want to hear the story. Subscribe, tell your friends. Go to stevegrayministries.com and keep going there. We're going to redo things. We got some new stuff coming. Lots of new things coming on Steve Gray Ministries website. Mm-hmm. So go there. But be a part of this because we have to have revival. We have to have, whatever that means to you, we've got to have a move of the Spirit. We cannot conquer the evil that is trying to get into our country by just politics and politicians. Where are the preachers? And we'll talk about what happened to me and what is hopefully going to happen to a lot of us in the days to come. Till next time, bye-bye.